Hello and welcome to The Wire Wrap, our weekly show where we discuss important developments. With me today, I have Senior Advocate in the Supreme Court Sanjay Hegde and National Affairs Editor of The Wire Sangeeta Barooah Pisharoty. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next week, that's from Monday the 1st of July, India will have a whole new set of criminal laws that will come into force. These were passed by the last union government and will replace the Indian Penal Code, the Code of Criminal Procedure and the Indian Evidence Act. There have been multiple concerns raised about these new laws, even though approximately 70% or a bit more are said to be identical to the previous codes. These concerns regarding the way these laws were passed without adequate deliberation, and also certain new provisions which include ones pertaining to alleged terror offences and also the removal of certain safeguards for accused persons. Experts have also pointed out that it's going to take a long time for all levels of the system, from the police to magistrates, etc., to get used to these new provisions and procedures that are to be followed. You have written quite a lot about these concerns. What do you think are going to be the main issues that we will see starting from the 1st of July?
Well, to my mind, there are several issues. The first issue is, what was the necessity at all?
Yes.
You said that you are going to decolonize. Now, a lot of things came in with colonialism, including your railway system, your telegraph system, telephone system.
Yes.
You give it a new name or whatever, there's no problem.
Yeah.
But if just for the sake of change, you say that instead of the meter gauge railway everywhere, we shall have a new gauge called Bharatiya gauge. Then you would have to change not only the distance between the tracks, you would have to change the signalling system, you would have to change several things all over the place. It has a huge cascading effect. Now, we have had the IPC, which has been running from the 1860s onwards. People have got not only used to it, you think in it. No sooner that you say 420, that people know that you are a cheat. 302, murderer. Now, the whole thing has to be reworked, rethought of, and it is not only the change of numbering that matters. Sometimes even a comma or a full stop has consequences. There will be a whole host of lawyers who will say that, look, all your previous interpretations are not true anymore. This has to be seen in this context, this has to be seen in this context. So, where is why did you settle law? To what effect? So, I think there is going to be a whole host of issues out there, starting from the very first stage. Now, you have, for instance, somebody who commits a murder in the dying hours of the 30th of June. It is discovered somewhere in the early morning of the 1st of July, and in an FIR, what do you say? Do you say 302? Do you say something else? And who? The policeman at the relevant police station, what does he do? What would be the principles to be followed? Even if the policeman's records that on the night of 30th of June at this happened, then what? So, this is going to play out extremely badly, in my opinion. We are going to have a lot of confusion, which was entirely avoidable. Okay, you wanted to change the names, you could have gone ahead, simple amendment. Even if you thought that there were certain provisions which needed amendment, you could have amended it. But it is like tearing down the India Gate, for instance, and then putting up a new monstrosity, which just does not have the same flavor.
Yeah, and we've seen confusions of the kind you've mentioned before, even when much smaller changes have taken place. For instance, when section 66A of the IT Act was struck down, the police took a very long time to stop charging people.
The police still use 66A.
Yes, even now sometimes they use it, and it's been years. So, I see your point on this. Entire change will definitely lead to quite a lot of confusion. But in terms of the specific new provisions or changes that have been made, is there anything that stands out for you?
Well, why did you have a limit on police custody of 15 days? 15 days of interrogation is more or less sufficient to solve any case, no matter how big. Now, you have changed it up to 90 days if the police want, and it is only after police custody is over, you are sent to judicial custody, do bails get granted. Now, the police are going to say that, oh, we have taken in him for about 10 days, then we need him for another 20 days later, another this one, so and it will stretch on indefinitely. People will continue to remain in prison with possibly bails being rejected much more. So, almost everything that was citizen centric, either in the law or through judicial interpretation, all that will have to be fought for once again. The law is no more just, reasonable and fair, or at least to the state that it was previously. All kinds of cases where the courts have interpreted in favor of the citizen, everything has been overcome by legislative fiat.
Sangeeta, I wanted to ask you as well, do you believe that this is a new threat for civil liberties in India?
I would say yes, and absolutely a yes. Two things I want to add to what Sanjay ji said. One is, of course, he's talked about why was the need. I would also like to add to it, how was it passed? Okay, it was, these laws were passed when the large number of Lok Sabha MPs from the opposition parties were thrown out, suspended. It was in the winter session. Okay, so there was no discussion. Okay, so these people, you look at it, all these MPs, 146 MPs were thrown out. 146 MPs represent 146 parliamentary constituencies, and count the assembly constituencies that make up for it. It's a large swath of population that they represent. And look at if you look at the number, I was just looking, for a story for the Wire at like how many of those MPs were suspended, came back to parliament, to almost most of them. Okay, so that means the people, they are people's representative. It has been re-established, and you don't allow them to discuss this bill, which will have an effect on common people, on the last man on the ground. So that's a big thing to worry about. Okay, and the other thing I want to point out is also that we as journalists are voices of the people and the public. Our allegiance doesn't lie with any government, certainly not with the government of the day. So I want to just point out that it's the process now which seems to be the punishment. Before we even go to the punishment level, before even go to the level of, say, as he said about going to bail and applying for all that, it's the process. I would like to point out here all the raids that has been happening, all these cases that have been, slapped on people, even with the Wire. What we have seen is there's so many, all these defamation cases and all that will be just filed, and name endless number of people, even to the last man standing in the office, the peon or whoever, the last man, and then everybody has to be taken to some other state to be presented, and multiple times. So what is it? You ensure that the process is the punishment, because by the time the punishment, you don't even reach there. Okay, so I see these new sets of laws, many of the things like what is talked about, 90 days. Okay, 90 days. Why do you need 90 days? And do we also know, we all know the state of the thanas that are in. You don't have even, forget anything else, proper your restrooms, nothing is there. Okay, so you will keep even someone who's even accused, complained, your punishment is not even, now nothing has been established. Okay, so this is something very worrying. What is talked about is also very important, like it has to be looked at as just. It's not being looked at as just. So that's something I, as a member of the civil society, very worried, and as a journalist will also be watching things very closely and how it pans out. Let's see from July 1st.
I want to move on to our second issue for discussion today, which has really been a burning issue in the country over the last few weeks, which is the whole scandal we're seeing around entrance examinations. It all started with the NEET UG exam, for the results for which were declared on the 5th of June, and immediately it was clear that things were a bit off. 67 people had scored 100% marks, which is a very large number. 6 of those were from a single exam center in Haryana, which is also weird considering that 2.3 million people sit for this exam. After that, the Wire's reporters have found that that center is actually run by someone who's closely associated, has family links to a BJP leader. Now, the National Testing Agency first claimed that these discrepancies that happened, including some marks that were not possible to get because of grace marks that they'd given for people who didn't get the full time allotted for the exam. And then they cancelled these grace marks and said those students could give a retest. But clearly that was not the whole story. After that, the Bihar police filed a case on a leak, found someone who was selling the paper. Now the Maharashtra police and the Delhi police are also probing similar allegations. The Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan first tried to claim that there was no leak, and then when it was proved that there was, said it was localized. So the exam results are still standing. These exams will still determine medical entrances. Now, we know that there's evidence of wrongdoing, so this does mean that there is likely to be some sort of injustice with these aspirants. Those who actually performed the best may not be the ones getting admission. Now, while it has tried to somewhat underplay the issue, it also does seem like the government doesn't have a handle on what's going on. This became even more clear with the UGC NET exam, which was held on the 18th of June. Just one day later, on the 19th, the government cancelled the exam after it became clear that the paper had been sold before the exam was leaked and sold before the exam took place. After that, the NEET PG and the CSIR UGC NET exams were supposed to take place. They were both postponed. Now, all of this has obviously led to a lot of uncertainty, a lot of stress and tension, and basically a threat to futures for millions of people. These exams and the allegations around them have also become a burning political issue. The National Testing Agency, which is actually a private body hired by the government and given the right to use the government emblem, has come under a lot of criticism. Its chief has been removed. The case has been given over to the CBI to probe. Sangeeta, I want to get your take on what's happening and also the government's response to it.
I would say it's a very pathetic response, I mean, see why this is coming very, just after the general elections, where we saw these paper leak of other exams as a poll issue, particularly recruitment exams. In UP we saw, and across the northern India, that belt, leading to a lot of frustrations in people. There's some suicides too, So how many times can you keep sitting for your exams, keep preparing for it? And if you are from a fairly lower middle class family, you have your dreams to only hold on to. How long can you? Okay, so this is what we saw, and in tandem comes this. And this also is quite amazing that you only because of that abnormal number of toppers came out suddenly, it was questioned, then only we just saw that what muck lies at the bottom. Okay, so now the thing is that the government is not cancelling it. They're announcing a committee, CBI, all of those things. CBI, we know now what kind of credibility the CBI has. So it's not just the NTA that has lost its credibility, CBI also for various reasons now to a large extent. So it's very easy to then just give it to the CBI and say maybe it will it'll be silent for a while and then something we'll see. So, but what I also want to point out is also that now everything is going towards the Supreme Court. Like we discussed about the first topic, there's some petitions been filed against these new IPC. So the Supreme Court will have to take a call, and I'm in coming times I'm 100% sure there will be more petitions going there. Okay, so NEET will also be something like that, like what they did in 2015. This used to be the pre-NTA days. It was to be run by CBSE, and then they cancelled. Okay, and let me tell you, this was like some of the things at that time. When Haryana police had to give a report to the Supreme Court, it talked about confirmed cases around some 40-45 cases or something like that. Here we are seeing so many more. Yeah. Okay, so it has become, of course, opposition is raising its this issue and all that. It is becoming a political issue too. But finally, it's the fate of these young people, you know, and also the whole brigade of doctors that we need, you know. This country is anyway a shortage of doctors. So what kind of people are we sending to the service, you know? So that's something is quite worrying. And yeah, so let's see what happens, you know, because if the Supreme Court might have to take a call on this. And one thing as a journalist I want to point out, you know, first time when yesterday we saw that Dharmendra Pradhan as the health minister coming to take oath, okay, that opposition benches were, you know, screaming at him, NEET and things like that. So I was just wondering, I was just thinking, I said, this is his first day. It's not the first day a minister would like to be reminded of
not
an alleged
welcome
scam.
you would have expected.
Yes. So that's something as a journalist I found it quite interesting.
Yeah. And you know, I think as you mentioned that it was a poll issue, not these exams specifically, but in fact even in the BJP's manifesto, which they called Modi ki guarantee, one of the guarantees they gave was that exams would be held in a fair, transparent manner, which one assumes is not a guarantee you should have to give it. It should be the expectation. But clearly, the very first month has shown that that's not working out.
Yeah, it's so
as
unfortunate.
planned.
It's so unfortunate. And the reason why it was put in the manifesto was because it had resonance on the ground.
Absolutely.
You see, not for nothing would you put that. So then you just adds up. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you for your take on these developments as well.
See, the point is that the leak had happened in May.
Yes.
Immediately a petition had been filed. The Supreme Court said, okay, we'll look at it later.
Yeah.
Then over the period of time, more and more details came out, more and more petitions have come out. The Supreme Court is to look at it the day it reopens after the vacations, that's on the 8th of July. But just because the petitions are pending in the Supreme Court doesn't mean that the government's hands are tied.
Yes.
It is more or less certain now that you have not had a fair exam. Now, once you acknowledge that there has been an unfair exam, then what are you doing about it? You prefer to appoint committees, you prefer to go in to investigate, you prefer to do a lot of things, but the results of that unfair exam you continue to enforce, because you will have counselling, you will have to give it based on the results which now stand. So, nothing prevents the government from cancelling the exam and saying, okay, sorry, we goofed up, we are very sorry to the students who will have to do it again, etc., but this is an extraordinary situation, this is the only remedy. We need a fair exam above everything else. But no, that is not what the government is doing. The government first tried to put its head in the sand and pretend that nothing had happened. Then it starts saying, no, maybe this has happened, that has happened. Take the bull by the horns and do it. Because if you don't do it, the Supreme Court, I don't think is going to pass an unfair exam. It may well be that the government wants the court to bring down the exam so that the students do not blame the government. So, it is whenever you want your dirty work done, you want the court to pass an order. So you remember during the farm laws, they said no, we can't take back what we have passed, but then in court the situation was such that the Solicitor General then did not really oppose the grant of a stay, and then they went to the farmers and said, look, the court has stayed it, so now why are you protesting? So, I think that the question to be asked till the 8th of July is, why is the government persisting with these results? These results are unfair, you have to set them right, you can't set them right through any process of filtration, so you have to redo it.
You know, one thing I just want to add, Jahnavi, you know, I mean, like, we've been seeing the Prime Minister Modi being presented as a very decisive man, you know, I mean, like, you know, he just really very kind of that strong leader. So, what I'm seeing it is also what he says is what I agree, that maybe they're waiting for the Supreme Court to strike it down, but it's also as the days passed, you know, it's also being looked at as, you know, and not a very decisive decision, you know, and he just come back back for a third term, and with not even simple majority, and where, I mean, like, I don't see him, his mum, the Prime Minister, is quiet.
And this is something, I mean, exams are something he has taken a personal interest in with his whole
Charcha and all of that,
Charcha, but he hasn't
there's no Charcha on
commented
this.
on any of this.
So I'm just looking at what has happened to the strong leader who could take these strong decisions. Does he have the guts to come out and say, well, I see there is some problem here, and you know, I don't want this to go. Even like, but maybe what Sanjay ji is saying is correct.
Need someone to
do the dirty work. Yes.
I think I'd like us to move on to the final topic I wanted us to discuss, which was to do with the case involving Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. He was granted bail by the trial court on June 24th, and the judge made some rather striking remarks, including saying that it seems like the ED, the Enforcement Directorate, is acting against the Aam Aadmi Party leader with some bias. But the very next day, the Delhi High Court halted his release and reserved its order on the ED's request for a stay on the bail. Kejriwal has since approached the Supreme Court against this, and yesterday the court observed that this was odd of the High Court to reserve its order and not pass the order, but also said it would not intervene until the Delhi High Court passes its final order. We're expecting that just in a few hours. We're recording in the afternoon, and probably by the time this video is released, we will know whether the High Court has decided to stay his release or not. But I just wanted to ask you about the situation as a whole, about the bail order and the observations the judge made, and also the speed with which the High Court acted and the way it acted. Is this the norm?
Well, one thing is certain, that sometimes the lower judiciary has judges who are young, who are enthusiastic about the law, and who are bold. So, this was a judge who was sitting there as a vacation judge. The matter came to her. She could have very well ducked it, saying, let the regular judge deal with it. She not only heard the matter at length, she told the counsels also to finish off their argument reasonably fast, and then she released her order. Now, the Enforcement Directorate, without even waiting for the order to be uploaded, goes straight to the Delhi High Court, files an appeal based on what they heard. The Delhi High Court says, okay, till we see the papers, let nothing precipitate happen. Then the order comes, it reads the order, it has a hearing, but it says, okay, we will pass an order, till then let nothing happen. Now, these steps, these interim acts of injunction are good, especially in demolition and various things. It is not unknown that when something precipitate is to happen, somebody is being hanged, somebody's house is being brought down. At that point of time saying, okay, just hold your hands, let's read the papers, let's come to a conclusion, then you either go ahead or don't go ahead. But when it comes to human liberty, I think things stand at a different footing, and I don't blame the Delhi High Court alone. Keep Arvind Kejriwal out of the equation. Look at what has happened in the Supreme Court to Mahesh Raut in the Bhima Koregaon. Look at what happened to Gautam Navlakha. Look at what happened in a couple of other cases as well. Sai Baba. The courts grant the men bail after such a long time, and then an appellate court says, no, they may have granted bail, but it will not be given effect to until we satisfy ourselves. Now, once a judicial mind has granted bail, another mind should say, okay, fine, I will consider the question, and if I find something wrong, I can put the person back in jail. But in the meanwhile, please do not interdict liberty, because any day or even hour of liberty that you take away from the citizen, you can't give it back. As it is, life has been unfair. When accusations are made, there are no trials, and without a trial you spend years in prison, and then finally at some stage a judge says, okay, go, this is a case where at this stage we should grant bail. That decision, while you are undergoing a DRS, it does not mean that you should continue to remain in prison. You can let him out under whatever conditions, okay, please go out every day, come to the local police station, sign your attendance and go back home. That kind of thing can be done.
Yes. Sangeeta,
yeah, this is interesting. I mean, just to add to it, I mean, he's finally the Chief Minister of Delhi. Where will he run away? He's, you know, and that's one thing. And also the way the ED, you know, functioned, you know, just to stop this, and ED being trusted and listened to more than over civil liberties and liberty of the rights of a prisoner or an accused. So this is something, you know, I'm just looking at it in you know, as a kind of a complete picture of what we are getting from July 1st, okay, like the new penal code and all of that, where even things like, if I'm not mistaken, there are things like, you know, it's not anymore that police, what you, your confession that you make to at the police station, you know, and what is extracted of it may be admissible in the court, of course, if a judge allows it to. Now, what we are seeing now with this case, the judge is actually first listening to the ED, and till now they have not been able to you know, set the money trail. When they're saying 100 crores, now they have come down to some 60 something crores. Okay, they have not been able to establish any of that, but yet so much power and so much heft have been given to the probe agencies, while we know that what they are doing is, you know, I mean, like, what is the reputation has become under this regime. And then in the new penal code also, there are a lot of heft given to the ED, CBI, police. So it's almost like a police state now. When we call ourselves the democracy, or to borrow the Prime Minister's word, as the, you know, the mother of all democracies, it's not just in words. We have to, I as a citizen have to feel like that. The last person in the, you know, in the queue will have to feel like that. You know, the job of the judiciary is that, to make you feel. Why do we say otherwise, you know, things like you know, innocent till proven guilty? It's not the other way around. Okay, so that's where I find it quite problematic. You know, as a journalist, I've been like really watching this, and let's see what happens today. What High Court says and what arguments it gives, and then something will pan out perhaps tomorrow in the Supreme Court too. But while talking about all of this, you know, we are also forgetting another Chief Minister, Mr. Soren, you know, not getting bail. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And you know, there was a lot of talk, and has been, continues to be, about these central agencies, the ED, the CBI, the IT department, and how they act selectively against opposition leaders. And Kejriwal is in jail, but he does get a lot of attention. There are a lot of headlines around this case, as there should be. But you're right in mentioning that, you know, Hemant Soren, he resigned just hours before he was arrested, but for all intents and purposes, he was the sitting Chief Minister. He's no longer. But that case has not been getting as much attention, and even in the courts, would you say that that case is getting the attention it deserves?
Well, because it's Jharkhand based, because Hemant Soren did not possibly have the media heft that a Kejriwal has, it didn't get that much of media attention. As far as the courts are concerned, to my mind, there is no doubt that if Kejriwal had been released to campaign, the same facility should have been allowed to Soren as well. But that did not happen. Soren's bail petition in the Jharkhand High Court is being heard, and I believe judgment has been reserved. But it also looks to me that everything turns on what signals are given. Now, if the Supreme Court had, after finishing Arvind Kejriwal's hearing, challenging the very validity of his arrest, had come to a conclusion, announced its operative order, and then written reasons later, then people would have possibly picked up a signal. Of course, the signal could be both ways. Right. If they had said that no, the arrest is valid, then also other things, it would have sent a different signal down the but forget all the court part of it. I just think as a democracy, if you can put your major opponents into prison without a trial, without an open trial and an immediate trial, and you say that I will do a trial in God's good time, but in the meanwhile you remain in prison, then as Sangeeta says, you are in a police state. And if your courts keep saying that no, there is always a burden of constitutionality, there is a presumption of constitutionality, that governments and all that will act in accordance with the constitution, then sometimes you are incentivizing unconstitutional behavior.
And mind you, Jahnavi, today we are having this discussion after so many years, you know, I mean, like, this is the anniversary of emergency today. Okay, I just want to point out, and this is what we are talking about. So where are we? You know, it's like what the Prime Minister is saying, we should never have emergency and this and that. This is only lip service then, you know. I mean, you have to make people, like everybody, feel a journalist should be able to work freely in a democracy, and political activists and opponents should be able to question the ruling party, dissenters should be able to dissent, you know. That's when truly we would say emergency just behind us, you know.
So, this is the anniversary of the declared emergency. Yes. Right now we have what, to use a pun that Vinoba Bhave had used in those days, it is the emergency, this atmosphere of threat, this atmosphere of possible neglect by the constitutional authorities, this disappearance from media space, all that continues. And quite frankly, a people are only as free as they want to be. You give any ruler, whether it be from here, whether it be from any of the other countries, the West, anywhere. You see what Trump is outlining, that he will do as soon as he comes back into office. Rulers like power, and they like absolute power. Constitutions and institutions are those that limit power. They say that you can do it only this way. Now, what is a constitution? A constitution is more than a limitation on power. It is a contract, a compact between citizen and state, and between us citizens, that this is how we will live among ourselves. This is how we will elect a government which will be subject to exactly what we have given in the constitution. So, it was heartening yesterday to see that at least one section of the House took the constitution out and pointed it. Now, I hope we get to a stage where people constantly open the constitution and say, no, this is what can be done, this is what cannot be done, I have my rights. And you know what to my mind is the most inspiring story on the constitution is when the tribals in Jharkhand put out their rights on stones in the Patalgadi movement, saying that this is what we have been promised and this is what we will work for.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and we have just entered the first session of Parliament for the new Lok Sabha. So, I suppose we will see in the next weeks and months whether there has been any change on the atmosphere we have been talking about.
Absolutely. I am, as a journalist, is ready for the turbulent weather ahead and keeping my seat belts on at all times possible.
Thank you both so much for joining me, and thank you all for watching. I hope you'll watch again next week.